begins a very long time ago, long before I was born. My father was born in 1897. He left school in 1910. After 13 years of school, he fought in the First World War in the trenches and came back from France minus one of his legs. But throughout his life, I knew him as a most committed, devout Christian man who believed fervently that not a hair could fall from his head without the will of his Father in heaven. And that puzzled me from being very young. How is my daddy so incapacitated? And what is the way in which God's will is done on earth, or will be done as it is in heaven? And those problems didn't lead me to study philosophy. You'll all discover that I'm not a philosopher. I spent getting on for 90 years trying to study Christians, and that's a very difficult proposition itself. And so, in some ways, my interest is in how the philosophy of Dooyeweerd can impact the Christian world, pastors, leaders, professors of theology, church people, etc., people who seek to introduce a Christian perspective in whatever career they're doing. And that is the first book. I don't know whether you can see it. That's Kuiper's Stone Lectures, published in England in 1932. It was on my father's bookshelf. I read it before I left school and went to university, and it was the only thing I had until I was in medical school. And then a friend in Oxford, I hate to mention that university, gave me a first edition copy of this one, which is J.M. Spear's Introduction to Christian Philosophy. So that was my second introduction. Eventually, I met up mercifully with some wonderful Dutch people, Adrie's father and mother, Adrie and Dengerink's father and mother, Jan and Lucy Dengerink, and also with Bernie Zijlstra, who was then doing his doctorate under Dooyeweerd at the Free University. They inspired me to take an interest in this man, Herman Dooyeweerd. And he struck me from the very first moment. This is intuition, not scholarship that's speaking. He struck me from the very first moment as a person with a vast erudition which many Christians needed to tap into. And so I'm interested in introducing you to Herman Dooyeweerd. Now, that's Herman painted inside the lid of one of my cigar boxes. Martin will tell you all about that in a future article, which he's going to publish. What other books have been published in English? Well, Spears was the first. Carl Speeks was the second. That, I think, was a very good introduction to Dooyeweerd, and I found that very, very valuable when I first got hold of it. I've passed it on to many people since. There's a very, very powerful, heavy book, but it's a really solid one. I don't know if you can see the title. That's Gardy Strauss's Philosophy and Discipline of the Disciplines. It's a really exhaustive, I'd also say exhausting, book to plow through, but it's a very, very useful book, and it has a good index. You can work through it very well. Then two more, sorry. Andre Troost wrote this book, which is What is a Christian Philosophy? What is Reformational Philosophy, sorry. And then most recently, the Dutch edition there. So why was I so interested? I suppose the things that most affected me about Herman Dooyeweerd were his distinction between naive experience, naive thinking, and theoretical thinking. And that played a large part in my experience when I looked at theology and how theology in many people's lives displaces ordinary biblical understanding. They want a doctrine, they want a theory that will explain what they're reading. And I think Andre Troost is very helpful on that, I found. I think many Christians would benefit from a real understanding that learning theology isn't learning Jesus Christ. It's a theoretical approach to the life of faith and the life of the church and so on. So that's one of my main interests. Why would I want this book published? I want something that is contemporary, that deals with the difference between naive experience, everyday thinking, and theoretical thought. That was important. I think the next thing is what everybody on this screen today knows, and that is Joyce's fantastic cosmology, this array of aspects of experience and of reality. That is an astoundingly fruitful chunk of thinking that we can look at those definitions or those approaches to different aspects and not see them purely in theoretical terms as isolated from each other, but we can see them as integrated, coherent things in everything that we meet in day by day. I think that cosmology is vitally important. I think also the section of his thinking on structures of society is an immensely valuable thing that Christians need to know when they look at church life, at their own life as members of churches, and as what they're doing as Christians outside the actual business of going to church.